All right, deep dive time. And wow, you guys have really thrown us a curveball this time. We've got a piece of visual art called Sindhu Da, and alongside it, we've got the writings of this artist, Bob Camblin.
Yeah, it's quite the combo. Visually, Sindhuda is really something else. You've got this like dreamy blue landscape, all these abstract symbols. It just pulls you in. And then Camlin, his words, they're all about life and art and nature. It's
Oh,
like he's
no.
handing us a guidebook to understanding it all, you
Yeah,
know?
it's like they were meant to be together. It's pretty cool. So, Sindhu Da itself, I was checking out the video transcript, and it seems like it's really playing with the idea of language. It has this abstract script running through it that nobody seems to be able to understand. It's like, what are you trying to say, art piece?
Well, that's where that Zen philosophy angle comes in, right? Zen is all about emphasizing direct experience over, relying on words. And Sindhuda, with that cryptic script, it just embodies that perfectly. It's almost as if the artist is saying, hey, stop trying to translate all the symbols and just, feel the energy of the artwork.
Yeah, just embrace the mystery. Don't get lost in the weeds trying to crack the code. I dig that.
Right, exactly. But the Zen connection goes even deeper. That big circle in the artwork, that could definitely be representing the Taiji, which is a huge concept in Chinese philosophy. You know that yin-yang symbol, the swirling black and white?
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
So it represents duality and balance, sure, but it also points to like an underlying wholeness. It connects everything.
Oh, I see. So it's tying together the landscape and all those symbols, suggesting a deeper connection between them.
Exactly. And then the landscape itself, with those almost like tent shapes or pyramids, it could actually be interpreted through the lens of the I Ching,
Mm.
specifically the hexagram for creative, which represents that raw potential, that creative energy waiting to burst forth.
I can see that. Those tent shapes, you could almost connect them to the retreat hexagram too, right? Like that idea of withdrawing into yourself to gain deeper understanding, kind of like meditation.
You're really picking up on those subtle layers. It's like the artwork is showing this back and forth between like creative outpouring and then introspection,
Yeah.
a burst of energy and then pulling back to make sense of it all.
Yeah, it's definitely giving us a whole vibe. But that script, though, I keep coming back to it. It's like the artist is taunting us with a language we can't understand.
I think that feeling of almost understanding, though, it might be intentional. You can always compare it to a Zen koan,
Yeah.
one of those riddles Zen masters use to kind of shake their students awake. Like, what's the sound of one hand clapping?
Oh, yeah, those. The ones that just make your brain melt.
Exactly. It makes you question everything.
Yeah, it's messing with us, but in a good way. It's like it's forcing us to reconsider what we think we know. Like maybe there's more to reality than what we can easily grasp with our minds.
Right. And it's not just Zen either. The way Sindhuda uses all this subconscious imagery and the dreamlike landscape, it reminds me a lot of the surrealist movement too. It's
Yeah.
all about tapping into that, that subconscious realm of dreams and
Oh,
intuition.
totally. Like Dolly with those melting clocks, or Magritte with his pipe that's not a pipe.
Exactly. There's definitely a playfulness to it, but also this real sense of depth.
Right. And the script, with how it's woven into those abstract forms, it reminds me of Mark Toby's work, that white writing style. He used these like ethereal, almost mystical lines to merge text with abstract art.
Yes, it's like both Sindhuda and Toby are saying, hey, there are ways of knowing that go beyond just, plain old words.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Bob Camblin comes in.
Yes. Camblin, we can't forget about him. We've got this whole collection of his quotes, poems, all about art and life and nature, and so many of them just seem to click with what we're seeing in Sindhuda.
It really is amazing how much synergy there is. Like, for example, there's this one quote from Camblin: Zazen, the aimless mind, focuses itself. It's about how, by letting go of trying to control our thoughts so much, we can actually allow real clarity to emerge. Does that ring a bell?
Dude, that's total the vibe of that cryptic script. Like, stop trying to decipher it, just let it be.
Right. And then there's that other one: find something in nature that completes you and then surrender. I mean, come on. Talk about embracing the mystery.
So good.
Isn't it wild how those words just perfectly capture the essence of Sindhu Da? That surrender to the experience, letting go of control, being present in the moment. It's like Camlin's putting words to what the artwork is saying visually.
It's like they're having a conversation across time and space through different mediums, art and words, visual and verbal, all blending together. It's pretty awesome. And you know what else? Camblin gets real about the limits of language, too, which seems like a central theme in Sindhu Da.
Oh yeah, for sure. He has this one quote that's so direct. The symbolists were right that in explaining something, it was killed.
Oof, right. Trying to capture something deep in words can sometimes just kill the magic.
Exactly. Camblin seems to be saying that some truths are just too big, too complex to be contained by language. And Sindhu Da, with that indecipherable script, it's like it's making the same point visually.
They're both like, hey, there's more to life than what you can explain. They're pushing us toward these nonverbal ways of knowing, like that intuitive leap that Zen philosophy talks about.
Exactly. Embracing the mystery, being okay with not knowing all the answers. And that brings us to another fascinating parallel between Camblin and Sindhu Da, the way they both celebrate the unknowable, the things that lie beyond logic and language.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into that.
Yeah, think about it. You've got those cryptic symbols in Sindhu Da, and they're like little puzzles, but they don't want to be solved. They resist easy answers. And Camblin's words, too, they're often full of paradox and even a touch of the mystical. It's like they're both intentionally avoiding neat explanations.
Yeah, they're both like, don't expect us to make it easy for you. There's always more to it than what you see at first glance. Like that Camblin quote, I didn't learn anything new, but I know a lot more now. It's like he's saying real knowledge isn't just collecting facts, but like shifting your whole perspective. It's a different kind of knowing.
Totally. It's like the difference between reading about swimming and actually jumping into the pool. Camblin, like the artist of Sindhu Da, they're both pointing to how words can't always capture certain truths. It's got to be a more intuitive, experiential thing.
Right. Makes you wonder how much we miss out on because we're always stuck on the literal meaning of words. What if we tried to tune in to those more subtle forms of communication, like the language of art or those gut feelings we get?
Well, Camblin actually gives us a clue about how to do that. He talks about training ourselves to open instead of close the circuits of perception, basically encouraging us to become more mindful, more open to experiencing the world in new ways.
So instead of shutting down when we face something we don't get right away, we should lean into that confusion. Be curious about the unknown instead of trying to define it immediately.
You got it. And that actually connects to another fascinating quote from Camblin. The artist is the only free agent. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it makes me think of artists as explorers, like adventurers of the mind, venturing into those unknown realms of thought and feeling. They bring back these new insights that can change how we see the world. They're not stuck following the same rules as everyone else.
Exactly. They can experiment, challenge norms, push boundaries, and when they do that, it can inspire the rest of us to break free from our own self-imposed limitations, tap into our creativity, and explore the unknown within ourselves.
Okay, but let's be real for a minute. Artists, like anyone else, they need to make a living. How do they balance that artistic freedom with the demands of the art market?
Ah, that's the classic dilemma, isn't it?
Mm.
Camblin himself wrestled with that tension a lot. He talks about how the art world often values novelty over actual substance. He even suggests that artists might need to stay anonymous to truly escape those market pressures.
So basically, if you want to make authentic art, you might have to ditch the chase for fame and fortune. It's a tough choice, but so many artists throughout history have done it.
Think about those anonymous artisans from centuries ago, or folk artists creating beauty within their communities without any expectation of recognition or reward. Their work wasn't driven by ego or profit. It was about expressing something deeper, connecting to something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, and maybe that's the biggest takeaway from both Sindhu Da and Bob Camblin. True art, true meaning, they come from following your own intuition, exploring those uncharted territories of the mind and spirit. It's not about following trends or seeking approval. It's the journey, not the destination.
Well said. It's about connecting with that creative spark within each of us, that drive to create, explore, and understand our place in the world.
Absolutely. So we've talked about limits of language, power of visual art, the role of the artist. But how do we actually live all this? How do we bring these big ideas into our daily lives?
That is the million-dollar question, right? It's one thing to talk about Zen and mysteries of the universe, but how do we put those ideas into practice? I know it can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be.
I hear you. It's easy to think, okay, I need to quit my job, move to a cave, become a Zen master, but maybe it's more about making these small, deliberate choices that reflect those values.
Exactly. Starts with paying attention, becoming more aware, noticing the world around us, our thoughts, our feelings, but without judging them, just observing.
So like taking a moment to really look at a tree instead of just passing by it, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And it might also mean being more open to experiences that challenge us, that push us outside our comfort zone.
Like engaging with a piece of art that's totally unfamiliar. Or something that doesn't give us easy answers?
Yes, exactly like Sinduda, with those abstract symbols, that strange script. It forces us to slow down, to think, to let go of the need for certainty.
Like practicing a new way of seeing, a new way of being in the world. And maybe that practice, it spills over into other parts of our lives, makes us more aware of the beauty and complexity all around us.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's not about some grand solution or rigid rules. It's about those little moments of awareness, those small choices we make every day.
Like spending time in nature, making something with our hands, having a deep conversation with someone we care about.
Or even just sitting in silence for a few minutes, quieting the mind and listening to our intuition.
I'm realizing this deep dive, it's not just about analyzing some art or decoding quotes, it's about a way of life. Approaching life with curiosity, openness, a willingness to embrace what we don't know.
That's the heart of it, isn't it? It's a journey we all take on our own terms, guided by our own inner compass. There's no one right way.
Right. We've covered a lot of ground here. Zen philosophy, the limitations of language, the role of the artist. But before we wrap things up, I have a feeling our expert has one last thought to leave us with. Something to ponder as we keep exploring these mysteries of art, language, and life itself.
It really is a journey, and I think as we go on this journey, we might want to ask ourselves, like, if language is one way we try to connect with the world around us, what happens when we run into those things that are just beyond words? Those things that we just can't explain. How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. We've been talking about these other kinds of languages, the language of art, music, nature, heck, even silence. Are those the tools we need when words just aren't enough?
I think they could be, yeah. Like, think about how music can bring up these super strong emotions. A memory, a feeling of longing, or even like a specific time and place, all without any words at all.
Oh, for sure. Like a certain song can just take you right back to a moment in your life. And you can't always put your finger on why it moves you, but it just does.
Right. Or think about standing under the night sky and looking up at all those stars. That sense of awe. It's so huge, there's no way to describe it.
You try to tell someone about it and you just can't do it justice. It's like those experiences go deeper than our brains, like they're speaking to something else inside us.
And maybe by, learning to recognize and appreciate those other ways of communication, those nonverbal languages, maybe we could start to connect with those things that are beyond words.
Mm.
We can open ourselves up to a whole new level of understanding.
So it's like expanding our vocabulary, but not just of words. It's expanding our vocabulary of experiences, of feelings, of how we see the world.
Exactly. It's like tuning into the whole symphony of existence.
Hmm.
All those little details and hidden connections that we usually miss when we're caught up in our busy lives and all those words running through our heads.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if we're missing out on so much simply because we're not paying attention in the right way.
I think that's definitely possible. And that's why Sinduda, with those mysterious symbols and that weird script, it's such a strong image. It's art that makes you think, that asks you to engage on a deeper, more intuitive level.
It's not giving us the answers, but it's making us ask better questions. It's encouraging us to be curious, to explore without having to figure it all out.
Exactly. And maybe that's the whole point. Maybe it's not about cracking the code or finding some hidden message. Maybe it's about surrendering to the mystery, letting the art move you without needing some logical explanation.
It's about trusting that even when things don't make sense, there's still something valuable there, that the journey itself is what matters.
And maybe, just maybe, when we embrace that uncertainty, when we let go of the need to know and control everything, we open ourselves to a much deeper understanding, an understanding that goes beyond what we can explain with words or logic.
Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into the world of art, language, and all those unexplainable parts of being human. We explored Sinduda, we dug into the wisdom of Bob Camblin, and we thought about that whole Zen idea of embracing the unknown.
We wrestled with the limits of language, and we found all those amazing ways of knowing that exist inside each of us. And I hope we've given you some new ideas to chew on, some fresh perspectives, maybe even some questions that'll stick with you after this is over.
The world is full of mystery and beauty and truths just waiting to be uncovered. So keep searching, keep asking questions, keep your minds and hearts open. You never know what amazing things you might find. Until next time, happy diving.